universe is action. If God doesn't exist, that means this whole planet is simply, literally, well, virtually, a pile of crap. And you are a nice little speck on that pile of crap. So I don't believe it's the most important question in life. Okay, either, I'm talking to the bride at this point, I'm like, okay, so your husband doesn't believe, or your future husband doesn't believe that God exists, which means he doesn't believe in free will. But in a couple weeks, he's going to promise to love you forever. Me? He doesn't believe in right or wrong. But he's promising he's going to be good and faithful to you. What does that mean? And he doesn't believe that there's actually a meaning to the universe. But at some point, he's going to look you in the eyes and tell you that he loves you. He's going to hold your child and say this means something. But none of it means anything. If there is no God, there's no free will. There is no right or wrong, and there is no meaning. But the great thing is this. I would say that's false. I would say God does exist. I would say that God is real. Not only because of this, not only because you realize, right? You had a choice this morning of whether you're going to have orange juice or milk. You had a choice this morning whether you're going to get up or stay in. You had a choice this morning of what you're going to stay awake right now or go to sleep right now. You have a choice of whether you're going to listen to that urge that says, I have to go to the bathroom. Or you're going to say, no, this is so amazing that I want to stay here. You have a choice. We realize we have an experience of free will. Second thing is this. You know there's a difference between right and wrong. Sometimes we disagree with what that is. But you know that there's some things I just should not do. There's some things I should always do. You know this. And at the heart of hearts, we sometimes realize that this world is confusing. We don't know what it means. But we always have the sense that it's got to mean something. Our experience tells us that there is meaning, that there is right or wrong, and that there is free will, which tells us what? God is real. That God is real. I mean, some of the greatest minds in history. I mean, I'm talking the best scientists. The guy who invented the Big Bang Theory, he was a Catholic priest. Not the TV show, but the actual, Big Bang Theory. The person who was the father of modern genetics was a Benedictine monk and a priest. One of Albert Einstein's closest friends were Catholic priests who were scientists. The Vatican has an observatory where they study physics and they study astronomy and astrophysics. The Catholic Church is a friend of the sciences. It's amazing. In fact, I don't know if I said this, the scientific method was developed by guess who? The Catholic Church! I'm not taking credit for it, I'm just saying. But this reality is that faith and science are not opposed, and the greatest minds, the most intelligent people in the history of the universe, the history of humanity, many of them have been Catholics, have been people who believe that God is real. Here's a crazy thing. God isn't just real. God isn't just real. He's here. God isn't just real. He's not just this mysterious force. He's not one of he's either Shiva, or he's Zeus, or he's Apollo, or he's, Krishna. But at one point in history, God reveals that he's come on this earth as one of us. This is crazy. I want to make the claim of this. I grew up in college, I went to college, and I used to take a number of classes called comparative religions. In a comparative religion class, what you do is, okay, all these religions that believe that God exists of some sort, here's all these, so you look at Hinduism, and Buddhism, and Taoism, and Hinduism, and Islam, and Judaism, and Christianity, and you all look at them next to each other, and all look at them as if they're the same thing. The crazy thing is this, one of those religions is definitely not like the other. Out of all these religions, in world history, all the religions on the face of the earth, one of them is entirely unique. Guess which one? Christianity. Christianity is entirely unique. It's different than every other religion. Why? Because in every other world religion, someone came along and they said this. They said, either I have a revelation from God, God told me such and such. Or they would say, I have insight from God, or insight into God. I kind of peered into this, I thought about it a lot, and here it is. But Jesus came on the scene. And unlike anyone else, he didn't just say, I have insight from God or a revelation from God. Jesus came on the scene and he said, what? I am God. That God is real and that I am him. So here's the thing. We look at this book of comparative religions. We have to say that, okay, here's one person who says, I have a revelation. Another person who says, I have a revelation. Here's Jesus who says, I am the revelation of God. I am him. He doesn't just say, look to my teachings. He says, look to me, which is crazy. I mean, think about this. If someone were to come on in this room right now, if I were to come on the stage and say, hello everyone, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to me, no one comes to the Father except through me. Would you say, okay? A lot of times that's what we think. We think that when Jesus was like, when he's on the face of the earth, that he came along and he said this. He said, before Abraham was, I am. That Jesus came on the scene and he said, if you want to live forever, you must eat my flesh and drink my blood. And people were like, just picking their nose like, okay, Jesus, that's great. You know, that's not what people did, because people back in the day, they were so dumb. I mean, they didn't even know how to use iPods. They didn't know how to program VCRs. They wouldn't believe anything. They didn't believe anything. In fact, if someone came into this room and said, I'm God, what would you make them do? Prove it, exactly. You would say, no, listen, hold up. You need to prove this. So what does Jesus do? He proves it. All throughout the Gospels, especially the Gospel of John. John says that whenever Jesus does a miracle, he doesn't call it a miracle. He calls it a sign and a wonder. Which is crazy, because what does it mean, a sign and wonder? What do signs do? Signs point to something. Jesus makes them, what do they point to? They point to the claim that what he said is true. Jesus comes on and says, I have the ability to forgive sins. I'm God. I can do this. Remember that story of the paralyzed man? His friends lower him on the mat. Jesus looks at the guy and he says, your sins are forgiven. And they look at Jesus and say, who but God can forgive sins? And Jesus is like, I know, right? He says, but to prove to you that I can do this. Why? Because I'm God. He says to the guy, rise, pick up your mat, and go home. And the guy picks up his mat. I love the fact, not only can the guy move now, he already knows how to walk. Double miracle, 2 points. Like, keeps going. Jesus, he talks to someone, here's a guy who's deaf and is mute, he can't speak and he can't hear. And Jesus walked up to him, and I love the story. It says Jesus puts his fingers into the man's ear and touches his tongue. Imagine if you're that deaf guy. You see Jesus coming towards you, you're like, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing, Jesus? And he touches, and the guy can hear. There's a couple of stories in the Bible where Jesus comes upon someone who's dead. There's a little girl, she's 12 years old. There's this young man. And there's also Jesus' best friend named Lazarus in John chapter 11. In John's Gospel, Lazarus has been dead for how many days? 4, exactly. Bible scholars. He's been dead for 4